Fine morning to you. It is the AWSC chat. I am Zanger in Portland, Oregon, and we took a little time off. We got a lot going on with Advertising Week Europe, which starts the 18th of March in London, the first ever. We're coming up on the 10th anniversary of Advertising Week in New York, which is very exciting. More to come on that. But with that heritage, we decided it was time to expand into Europe. So Advertising Week Europe London, go to advertisingweek.eu. One of our friends who is going to be joining us there is our friend Dave Burse, and this is his book, A User Guide to the Creative Mind. It's a deliciously meaty book in a very agile package. Boy, how corporate speaky was that? Getadditive.com. Again, Dave Burse, super talented guy, great friend of ours, and looking forward to seeing him in London. Programming note, that's professional broadcasting right there, gents. We will not be having a chat next week. I will be en route to London for Advertising Week Europe, but we will endeavor to do one during the week. We may or may not, so just stick with us. We'll keep the programming notes aplenty. If we don't get them the next couple of weeks, we'll be going every week from here on out. There's just a lot going on, and we decided to touch on this topic because it's something that I actually had to go through on Friday, and it is presenting with confidence. First, I want to introduce the panelists. The panelists, I'm making it seem so formal. Good Lord. Newbear Lesniewski, my partner in crime in Lexington, Kentucky. Say hi.
I think you bought me this. Didn't you buy me this?
I did buy you that. It's a University of Kentucky hoodie. And
I just like to say that the real reason we're doing this chat on presenting with confidence is because I just wanted an excuse to put Ryan Thomas on camera.
You know what? Yeah. So Ryan Thomas. One of the original 12, kind of like the NHL. One of the original 12 contributors of the Advertising Week Social Club. Super talented guy, and our friend up in Toronto. Ryan, we could actually just have no topic, and you would not be short of things to say.
I do what I can.
Now you're being shy?
Honestly, I had this terror. I had this absolute abject moment of terror. It's like, come on to a broadcast, reach out to a few hundred people, a few thousand people more, and talk about the thing that you're currently engaged in, right? Like presenting with confidence on a web broadcast. And I was like, I guarantee the first words that come out of my mouth I will botch. It was almost a moment of promise and a terrible point of irony.
Well, you are Canadian, so go ahead and just get that apology out of the way.
And we're done. Perfect.
Speaking of which, homage to Canada right there. My son's police station, Canadian flag. We're going to go ahead and say that's British Columbia, so there's clearly nothing going on. All right. Did I say that out loud?
Yeah.
Was that good Canadian humor?
It'll work. It'll work. Always badmouth Toronto. Safest bet.
Okay.
Always.
All right. Winnipeg?
Nothing ever happens there. It's got no reach. You make fun of it.
I know. No, and I love Vancouver. I love British Columbia, and I've been to Winnipeg a few times. So I think it's a fine city. So I'm just being a smartass and a jackass.
I like your beer.
My what?
I like their beer.
Canadian beer?
Yeah.
Spectacular. Actually, everything Canadian is great to me. The food is phenomenal. The people are wonderful. It's a gorgeous country. I absolutely adore Canada, and I'm not just saying that to suck up. That's the God's honest truth. So.
Well, the best part about it all is that somehow Ryan managed to get all of that in one package, otherwise known as his better half at Anne Kaye.
I highly recommend a better human being than me, Anne Kaye. Really quickly, speaking of Canada, one weird product note in a category that I think is really interesting. I don't know if you've heard or if you caught any of the Jon Stewart stuff about the maple syrup mafia of Quebec. Yeah, have you heard of this at all?
I know of it. I haven't delved in quite yet.
We had a Canadian grand theft of 100,000 liters of pure uncut maple syrup, and this was a travesty. But what you need to know is that it's part of a much bigger conversation. Coconut water has exploded right? By any kind of measure, as a sports hydration drink.
Right.
The Quebec Maple Mafia, also known as the Quebec Maple Syrup Producers Federation, is coming out with 3 products next year, and it is actually unprocessed maple sap, which is called maple water, which apparently is better for you in every category than coconut water, and 100% Canadian. And I guarantee, since 80% of that stuff is pushed out of the country, and volume, it's 10-1 on making maple syrup, you're going to have a lot of billboards in Portland to drink the sweet, sweet nectar of the tree.
Well, speaking of Portland, I can get you something pure and uncut here as well. But I don't know how I can get that over the border. All right. Question 1, Newbear. Let's get to the task at hand. We've stalled far enough.
I'm just making sure the good people on the Rally Tote board can understand that they can see all of our beautiful facial hair live. Question 1 is confidence, an innate or learned trait. Either way, how do you increase it? And the hashtag, as always, is awscchat.
Let's, Ryan, why don't you just start on this, and we'll get some more answers in. But talk about this. Because I think that, I'm raising 2 kids right now, and I can see that both of them probably will be pretty good presenters if they keep on this track. Hopefully one of them walks away with an Academy Award someday for something. But, do you think it's something natural, or is it something that is learned or can be learned?
Well, I was talking to Newbear about this when we were prepping, and quite honestly, the reason that con men is short for confidence men, it's an entirely learned skill. It's like carpentry, it's like design, it is a skill that is learned, and it is like mastered and refined over time. I have not had what I would call an employed job that I didn't make for myself for the last, I'd say, 8 years now, going on 8 years, and it all comes down to learning that one skill, right? It's entirely nature for me, or it's entirely nurture for me. It's something you build, it's something you encourage.
Yeah, but having known you for a couple of years, you have a natural, I guess, theatrical air about you. Isn't that something that you would feel is more on the natural side of it? I understand that that the nurture side of it is there, but wouldn't you say naturally that just that showmanship or showpersonship, we're being politically correct, don't you think that really that provides a foundation that can take you to being from a good presenter to an outstanding presenter?
Before you answer, @Ankaye would like to note that the innate is for the very lucky, the learned for the rest, increased with previous success plus ongoing support and learning. So she probably, I would say, 78% agrees with you.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm never going to be Wilt Chamberlain, right? Like I no matter how much basketball I practice, that's fair. But when we're talking about something like confidence, I think so much of it inherently comes down to what you learn from other people and what you're able to push aside. Remember the first time you applied for a job? You really needed a job. You really needed to put a roof over your head and money in your, and it's scary. It's terrifying.
Right. And
if anything's going to sabotage that, it's fear, right? So you have to walk in, you have to believe in what you're doing, and you have to understand what the other person genuinely needs out of it. And once you do that, you build confidence, and that's a learned skill set. Pushing aside that fear, the first time I had to say that's going to cost $1 million. Saying that line with confidence takes an incredible amount of practice. If you've never done it before, when you say, "Please, sir, at this moment in time, the problem you have presented and the solution you need requires $1 million American dollars." Right? Learning to say that in a way that doesn't sound like, especially for a Canadian, that immediately you are apologizing. Right? Because the first time you do it, and by the time you parse out all the peats and you pay all the people involved, it might only work out to being a very small sum of money for you, like barely livable. But at the same time, you have to confidently say, reach into your back pocket, pull out the big checkbook, the novelty one, and write me $1 million check. Practicing that line, being able to confidently say that without batting an eyelash is pure practice. There's no amount of natural ingrained talent that makes that come comfortably off the tongue. It just will not happen. right? Like, does that make sense?
It does. I think I wish Dave Burse was in this conversation, because anytime nature nurture is involved, I love to have him on the other line, because he has so much stuff in his head that he has pulled out of the universe that he could just burn almost any nature argument. And I love the nature side of it. The ability, like, you roll out of bed with the ability to run fast, jump high, the Wilt Chamberlain analogies. But at the same time, that dude couldn't hit a free throw to save his life on down through Shaq and Dwight Howard. So it didn't matter how many times he practiced that skill, he couldn't learn it. So I have to believe that a large portion of it is based on how you're wired, is who you are. And I think when you talk about, needing that first job, you really needed a job, you really needed to pay your bills, keep a roof over your head. It's not just that fear of failure, it's the fear of success, which I think, if not more powerful, is more demoralizing, is being afraid to be great. And so I think that whenever you're talking about confidence, it's very rarely for me a thing of, is this person afraid to fuck up? It's really, does this person have what it takes to be great?
Yeah. Fundamentally for me, at any level, if somebody is paying you for something, right? If there's something somebody needs and they're willing to pay for it, at a certain level, they would like to set it and forget it. How much money does it take to make my problem go away? Right? That's the inherent, or another way to look at the problem, right? On the other side is, I have this many monies, I have this problem, can you make this problem go away for this many monies? Right? It's the oldest profession in the world. So for me, it all comes down to how confidently you can actually achieve that goal. And it's not a scale that gets bigger with the amount of money. It's a direct, percentage. Right? Am I 100% confident in your ability to solve this problem for amount of money that I have or am comfortable with, or that I think this problem is worth, and vice versa.
One thing I want to point out about the learn side of it. Okay,
Yeah,
so one of the things that you notice, especially when you're early in your career, is that you may have the natural ability, but it becomes, how do I put this? So I remember early in my career presenting, and it was a little bit clunky. And then what I kind of fell back on was overdoing it and trying to make it, overly professional, and then it became really stale. So finding that middle ground between what your natural personality might be and what's acceptable to convey a message in a way that people will accept, I think, is an important piece. And it takes time.
I think when you talk about that stuff too, you're one of the most self-deprecating people I know. You're also one of the most highly decorated people that I know. So when you talk about the second side of this question, how do you increase it? Do you think that we got a lot of responses coming in, people talking about trial and error, talking about learning. One thing that Ryan and I talked about leading into this was learning yourself, right? You're talking about being a little bit too stale versus a little bit too clunky, the happy medium. Don't you think that learning what that happy medium is and figuring out the best way to do it and do it confidently is knowing who you are?
Right. I think so. And then our friends at Hybe, salut Hybe. They mentioned, the most important factor for confidence is believing in what you say. That is, that's a key thing, because if you go into something and you're not fully vested or invested in what you're talking about, it's very obvious. It doesn't matter how adept you are at presenting. People can sniff that out. That's something that is very easy to see, hear, and feel. Insincerity in presenting is quite honestly, it's very obvious. It's the feedback that I've gotten over the years in terms of presenting, because my style is just a little bit more unique. And Newbear, you're right. I do go the self-deprecation route, and I try to keep it loose a little bit. Just because it can get boring, and fortunately I have the ability to kind of keep it going that way. But generally you'll get a very small subset of people who will pat you on the back. If like the big boss or the big person comes up to you afterwards and says, even just in a couple of words, that was great, then you've done a good job. But it's it's a trial and error thing. So for people who are young or new in this business, practice. Yeah, I mean, I know it sounds like something that, it's like, why do I have to practice? I know what I'm doing.
But what Ryan was talking about earlier about literally saying,
right,
I need $1 million. You ever sing to your girlfriend or try to record a voice memo for a chick that you're trying to impress? How many times do you hit delete on that shit and redo it so you don't mess up any of the notes till it's perfect?
I got 15 wasted mixtapes. I have 15 wasted mixtapes.
Yeah, get the hairbrush. I mean, I'm bald, so get your hairbrush microphone out in front of the mirror and sing a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, practice is good, and I know it's corny, but no, I mean, I've accidentally walked into the office of like managers that I've worked for, and they're presenting. They're getting ready to present. I mean, even everybody who you see on stage. I mean, the late Steve Jobs, Tim Cook, Steve Ballmer, Zuckerberg. They're practicing, and they have found or are finding a sweet spot in there. So that practice is actually quite important.
And they've got handlers. You're not just practicing in front of the mirror.
Right.
You've got.
I know.
Handlers.
Yeah, but if it's just you need to be your own worst critic. This thing that I presented last week, it's all about this farmers market program that we're working on in Oregon. Shocker. There's 25 people who, it's basically, arrows coming at me. It's like, okay, smart guy, what are you going to tell us about our business? And it was just, there was a point when it was moderately uncomfortable, but at the same point, I was very convicted and confident in what I was saying because, in my opinion, I believe it's the right direction for this particular campaign. And I believe it wholeheartedly. It's not something that I'm sort of half-assing. It's just, this is going to work, and here's how. But the telling time of any presentation is literally the first 30 to 60 seconds. That is honestly your make or break time. And how you get into it is really important. I tend to go the anecdotal route. I try to find a common ground. In the case of this farmers market presentation last week, I was talking about my history. So I was born in Minnesota. I lived next to a farm until they sold it for houses. My family in New Jersey, between Philadelphia and Atlantic City, they had a huge. My grandparents had a huge garden. My grandparents in Pennsylvania had a huge garden. So, the idea of fresh, vegetable and fruit is something that's been sort of part of my DNA. And then having lived in Portland, it's like, walk down the street, there's a farmer's market. And so I let in with it with, the understanding that, look, I might be the guy that's the marketing guy of this, but, I want you to understand that I'm a consumer as well. And so this is coming from different points of view. But it really, honestly, in that first 30 to 60 seconds, that's your make or break. You can, if you fumble on that, you can make it up, but it's a lot harder. So, I mean, the first 30 to 60 seconds, in my opinion, is crucial.
I actually heard a great one at Advertising Week 2 years ago. Somebody actually mentioned it was Cisco when they were first onboarding consumers onto video chat and online meeting services. They actually had to teach people and tell people to take 5. And Cisco's take 5 was about actually conversing like a human being before jumping into work. Mm-hmm. And that was a skill that they had to teach to their product knowledge, their entire consumer base, to make the tool effective. I mean, if that's not telling, if Cisco sitting on these gigantic systems and these multi-billion dollars has to teach people to socialize for 4 minutes before they start,
right.
And that was the most valuable thing they could do in any meeting, any teleconference. It was the exact same as a regular conversation. I think that right away will tell you. That's a learned skill. What can you do in 5 minutes, right?
When you were introing that thought, all I could think of was the thong song. When you said Cisco, my head just went to a totally different place.
We all have name and brand challenges.